Well, hi Pat, how are you?
I am well. How are you, Miss
I
Nina?
I am good. And hello to everyone that's watching us on Facebook. We're going to do another session on pageantry. So today I have with me Pat Miller, who is the Executive Director of Pure International Pageants International. You've been in pageantry a long time. You've been in pageantry doing lots of things other than directing for a long time. And now
Mm-hmm.
you are a director. So today we're going to be talking about, and we've tried to pick topics that aren't normally discussed, which
Mm-hmm.
probably lends itself to hopefully maybe some education information and maybe gives us all
Okay.
a reason to think about some things going into pageantry. But
Yes.
today's topic, and I do have a cheat sheet, so when I look down, that's what I'm doing. Our topic today is how to run an ethical pageant, avoiding lawsuits and legal complications. And as
Okay.
strange as that sounds, you and I, as a former director, you and I, have had our share of contracts and obligations and things we're responsible for.
Yeah.
But I thought we would start about with the venue because
Okay.
you do pageants all over the United States. You have a national and an international. So I can only fathom how many venues that you all contract for.
Yes, we do. One thing that I make sure that I do as the executive director is that every director I have, whether they're a national director or a state director or even a local director, is that every contract that they have to run it by the international office first so that we make sure, because some people don't understand the contractor obligations that they're signing up for. They may not understand the lingo that's in that contract. So I make sure that they run that by me so that they're not committing themselves to something that they can't afford to pay off in the end. That's the most important thing. I also look at the contracts to make sure they're only getting the space they really need because, just like any other business, they might want to try to oversell you for things that you don't need.
Right.
So, with that being the case, I wouldn't want my queens have to, or my directors, putting out money for things that they really don't need. So, and I've always had the thought process that I would rather be a big fish in a little pond than a small fish in a big pond. And so I don't want somebody booking a 5,000 square foot room when they only might need 2,500 because you want to keep that excitement. There's excitement in numbers. So if the people are scattered, it's not as exciting. So that's one thing that I look for as well. I also look for obligations to room blocks, to maybe meals,
I was going to
and
ask
things
you.
like that. They also have to figure out they've got to have a load in time. They've got to have a tear down time. They also have to clean up time because I always want to make sure that we leave a location better than when we found it. So that's something that we look at as well. Um, a lot of, especially hotel venues, don't allow to bring outside food in. So there's just little things that you have to look at to make sure that everybody's abiding by the rules and regulations. I also want to make sure that the venue is a safe location, that it has ample parking, and that if you're going to have people there all day, are they going to have access to being able to go get lunch? So you've got to consider a lot of things about that person's day, the contestant, the judges, and the director as well.
Yeah, and I find that room block you talked about and food obligations often become a stumbling block because
Yes.
they're so easily overlooked.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and I can remember, it was a real learning experience for me the first time I booked a location because I didn't want to be in a position where I found myself obligated for hotel rooms that you could not fill.
Yes. Yes.
Have you been or any of your directors been in that situation where suddenly you've got an issue with room blocks?
Um, really, I only had that happen one time, and that was quite a few years ago. I had a director that signed the contract. She was just that kind of person that you never really know somebody until you've done business with them. So what I learned about her later on was that she was a very strong-willed person, and so she signed a contract without running it by me. And she had actually signed a contract that obligated her to 50 sleeping rooms for 3 nights in a row. So that's 150
Oh,
nights
wow.
times the price of the room. And so finally, it just come down to it. She didn't have the money to pay it, and so the hotel basically ended up saying, luckily for her, well, she doesn't have the money, so we're going to drop it, and they dropped it for her. But that can be a real problem with everybody. And one of the main things that I've learned, especially if you're renting a venue for a big pageant, like we'll have about 200 or so contestants at our national and the USA, or excuse me, our international and our USA pageant this year. If you don't have the meals, And sometimes the meals will offset the cost of your venue part, and sometimes your hotel rooms will as well. But if you don't have those, you could pay anywhere from $5,000 to about $20,000 a day for the venue itself. And I think, and I always try to educate my contestants on that as well, because I want them to understand when they're paying their fees that it's a value of what they're getting. So I want them to understand if we weren't charging everybody just a minimal amount, then somebody has to pay the big amount. So I try to let them understand where their money goes and what it's used for, because that also helps them to say, okay, I understand why Pat is charging, $6.99 for this, or $199, depending on the location as well. So it can be very pricey, because I price quite a few venues, whether they be convention centers or hotels, even church fellowship facilities. Every place is going to have a different type of contract, and the contract is really written to protect them,
Yeah.
not you. So you also have to make sure that some things can be put in there. And one thing that I learned in doing this was that you can negotiate anything. I know with the hotel that we have now, we're going to be at the Airport Columbus Marriott in July, and they have been wonderful to work with, because I come back and say, well, I have this situation. How can we help this?
Yeah.
Like if I have people coming from other countries coming in, well, you've got to think about the dollar value difference in their dollar and our dollar, and how can we negotiate a fee that is more feasible for them. So there's all those little things you got to work out. And you can also renegotiate your room rates for your sleeping room rates, because I come back to them, I said, look, we can't pay $18 a person for. You can go.
Let's see if we pick Pat back up. I lost you halfway through. Are you with me? Pat, are you with?
I'm with you, but I can hear you.
Okay, I've got you.
Okay.
So I go back like 2 or 3 minutes. I lost you there for a while.
Okay, I'm going to turn my thing off. I'm getting all kind of notifications there. I just said with any contract that you're doing, you can go back and negotiate anything you want, from your room rates to your meal rates, so that they help offset the cost of the venue as well.
I agree. I have always been blessed to work with great hotels, and I always could negotiate those items on that contract that I was most concerned about. And usually, I think too, if you give them, even your room blocks or the amount of food that you've contracted for, I would always say up to a certain date, and that might be 2 weeks before the pageant, and they would then put back on the market the rooms that I had not contracted for. That way, the director and the system doesn't absorb the cost of that.
Yes, I found that to be mostly within 30 days out, because by then you should have all your pageants done.
Yeah.
And there's also a thing called attrition, where they might
Exactly.
say you book 100 rooms, and then you're responsible for 80% of that. So instead of having to have 100 rooms for that night, you may only need 80. And that helps you, that gives you a little bit of a cushion there to not worry about hitting that full number. And the same thing with the meals as well. And one thing you have to watch with your meals is that a lot of hotels will give you this fancy menu and fancy prices to go with it, when a lot of people in pageantry aren't really used to paying those kind of prices for meals. So one thing that I've been able to do, I go back and say, hey, I want to have ABC for lunch and this for dinner. What's a price you can give me that I feel like my people can afford? And if that doesn't work, I negotiate a meal. So you can negotiate your meals as well as your rooms.
Well, and I always get tickled because when it comes to the food, they want to quote sandwiches and they want to quote French fries. And you and I both know that is not the menu that a young lady competing in a pageant is going to eat that weekend. Mom and dad might. That's not going to be what she eats. So, So we So we always go back and do that one. Let's talk about vendors and suppliers. I don't know, I usually had working agreements. And I was blessed here because a lot of the people that I call team members were people I had known ever since Rebecca started competing when she was 9. So I was blessed for that. But I did do things with some vendors that were kind of new to me at the beginning. I did working agreements as opposed to contracts per se. So it kind of said what they got in exchange for their sponsorships. How do you work it at Pure?
Yes, we do that too. We actually have a vendor contract that we do. And one thing that I have in my vendor contract that is if I am selling a product, and let's just use, for example, I am selling a crown ring. Okay. If I'm selling that product, I don't allow them to sell it because, first of all, we have to have our own best interests at heart because we're the one that's paying that bill. You know, we might charge them $100 or $300 to set up for the day or the week, but let's just face it, that's just a drop in the bucket compared to the expenses that we have.
Exactly.
So, and I don't allow vendors to sell my own product with my logos and things on it because I want to control the quality of what goes out there.
Yep.
Now, if I have somebody that I'm partnering with that's a sponsor, I might allow them to have some things to bring in to put in what we call our boutique. And, but I always have them sign an agreement. Sometimes if I'm not charging a fee for them to set up, I might charge a percentage of their sales or something like that, because if it weren't for me, they weren't getting to sell anyway, right? So that's one thing I do, but they have to sign an agreement that they have to be within the moral and ethics standards of our pageant. They have to understand our mission. They can't sell products that we feel would be offensive to our people that's going to be there, and everything should be age appropriate as well. And then I also have a code of conduct within that vendor's form that how I expect them to act, which is be professional, no profanity. You know, they shouldn't be, say, maybe I don't want them to be drinking and smoking while the event is happening in the room I'm in, for example. So I just have some set standards that I want them to go by. And if they're not willing to go by those, then I don't allow them to set up. Now, I will tell you at our national, international level for the last 5 or 6 years, we have basically outgrown our facility, so I haven't had space to put vendors in, except we are adding hair and makeup artists this year into like an area for them to set up. Before, we haven't even had space for that, but we switched venues this year. So I do have contracts for people like the hair and makeup artists. They also have to go through a certification so they understand what our expectation is and what our contestants need and what the rules and regulations are for using their services as well.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that just makes for an easier flow for the entire pageant weekend when everybody kind of shows up and knows exactly what's expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the contract.
Okay.
Going into a local pageant or a state pageant, chances are girls have a contract they have to sign. I know they used to with me. I always felt it was better if I let you know what I expected from you, and then you had a right to know what to expect from me. So give me
Yes.
your take on contracts and kind of how you run that as they're entering your state pageants. And then, honestly, what kind of a contract do you expect your title holders to sign? And what kind of responsibilities or obligations do you give them in that contract that you expect them to hold to? And how do you handle it if you have a title holder who suddenly isn't fulfilling her obligations? You know,
Okay. Well, we do have a contract. First of all, the first thing they do when they sign it with us, we use a program called Tally Genie. And I love it for the registration portal part of it, because once they're registered, if I decide to use the scoring part, all of their information also goes into the scoring part. But within that registration part, when they get to the end of it, before they make a payment, it says, I agree to the rules and regulations set forth within the website. And I understand that my obligations are to do a community service project and 10 appearances throughout my reign. And so that is there. And then, and it says, upon making a payment or submitting this form, you agree, and this serves as an electronic contract. So that's an initial sign up for me. That information is also on our website. And I think one of the biggest things that I see with, it's not necessarily just new pageants, but it's just some pageants, whether they're established or not, is there's no information on their site. They want people to go in, they want them to pay this fee, and there's no information on what the expectation is of the contestant. So they're signing up blindsided. They don't know what the expectation is. So I would never sign my daughters, my granddaughters up, or even myself to compete at a pageant if I didn't know what the expectation was of me. I wanted to know what my financial obligation was. I wanted to know if I won this local title, if I had to go to state, if I went to state, if I had to go to national, if I won national, I had to go to international. So I wanted to know what because that's a time commitment too, because usually you're looking at maybe 2 to 3 years that you're going to be with this organization. So I think everything should be disclosed and it should be out there. So I have a lot of information on my website under the rules and regulations tab on my site. And so I have how many projects they have to be involved in, how many appearances they have to make, what their wardrobe expectations are, if they have to have a chaperone to certain events, depending on the age of the contestant. So there's a lot of things built into the website. And so once they fill out that initial form, that information is there. So let's say that a person wins a local title and she's going to state. When she applies to be a state contestant because she won her local, that same information is there. So it's repetitive. And same thing when they go to national, from national to international. And we also provide handbooks to our contestants that kind of summarize the website so they're not having to look at everything, because we do have a huge website, maybe like 400 pages. And I had somebody tell me one time, said, man, you have a lot of stuff on your website to read. And I was like, well, thank you. I said, because I would rather you know than ask questions later.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, sometimes it can be overwhelming. But most people are very appreciative that that information is there. In my contracts, like I said, I do require them to do so many community services and so many appearances throughout the year. And it depends on the level that they are competing in, because sometimes we require more of an international title holder than I would out of a local title holder, because when you get to the upper levels, a lot of times those international title holders, for example, are your face of your business. So you want them abiding by those rules and regulations, clear down to, you know, if you're going to do a live Facebook feed, you should have your hair and makeup done, for example, you know. So there's little things that you need to look at. A lot of people just don't think about, and it's not to be offensive or to keep our thumb on people. It's just to teach them how to be professional and to sell. They're not only selling themselves or my title, but they're selling themselves as well. And I do have them sign that at every level. And we have an actual contract signing after our winners are crowned at every level. And we sit down and we go through what the expectations are. And we go over their handbooks, and then we prep them for the next area of competition that they, or next level that they will be going to.
Wonderful. You know, I always appreciated being able to say, here is what I expect of you, and you have a right to expect these things of me as well. And I think
Sorry, my Pomeranian's barked.
that's quite all right.
Doug just pulled in.
I think,
Oh, go ahead.
you know, the other part of that is too the prize package, because I'm sure you list your prize package, and that too is part of a contract. And, you know, I've kind of always said to the girls, you know, there is a list of obligations that I have a right to expect from you, but here's the prize package. And
Yes.
I think, you know, we hear stories of, you know, prize packages that aren't fulfilled or whatever the case may be. And it's no different than a title holder who doesn't uphold her end of the agreement as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so
I
give me your,
have pulled titles before. I've had girls who did not meet their obligations. Maybe they didn't do their appearances. For example, one thing we do is if you meet your qualifications, you've done your appearances, you've done your community service. If you've done that, then, for example, we might pay on your hotel room when you come back to give up your title. And we say, if you don't, then we don't have to pay that. So it's a you do, you get kind of thing there as well. And I've had a few people, one of the things that I see, and I know this isn't really part of the conversation, but I've had girls who maybe would go out and just do other pageants, like they didn't even have a title at all. And I think everybody needs to understand that no matter what title you win, it's important. I don't care if you win your county fair queen, or you win an international title, or you win Miss USA. You're going to be obligated to something. So, you know, if I always tell everybody, you expect things of me, it's okay for me to expect them of you as well. Mm-hmm. And so if I have girls that are maybe, say, doing pageants, they shouldn't be doing pageants, and they've exceeded the number that they were allotted, then I may ask them to give up their title. Or if they sign a contract saying that I won this title and I'm going to come to the next level, if they don't show up, then I'm not required to give them those awards as well. So I do hold those back, and you have to. And it really is a shame in the society that we're in that we have to do that. I know I left a corporate job to come here, and I would have to make appointments, and I managed about 1,500 contracts for this organization that I was with on an annual basis. And I would set up appointments to go meet people, and I would have to set up 8 to 10 appointments, and a lot of times one person would show up. So it just kind of bothered me that people are people who don't keep their word. And I understand that things happen, life happens. Has everything ever worked out perfect for me? No, because I've been learning as I've been going. We will celebrate our 10th year next year, but I was not involved in pageantry before that. I was just a corporate manager with a cosmetic company, and I was held responsible for millions of dollars in sales. So I had to learn to kind of be tough about a few things. And so I carried some of that knowledge into what I'm doing now, because now if I don't motivate and I don't keep it on track, then everything else will fall apart. So,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of people need to understand that it's a pageant and it's about changing lives and impacting lives, but it's also a business too.
Yeah.
Because if we didn't run and take care of the things we were supposed to take care of, then the first thing's going to happen is they're going to start ripping us up and tearing us apart. I've always done my very best. I even have to take it out of my own pocket to make sure that I met all obligations. And I'm sure there's going to be people that say, oh, well, she didn't do ABC. Well, I did my best. I'm doing everything that I can. But there are times that when we have to look at and make sure that we're doing the best things we can ethically and morally, because there is that chance of somebody saying, oh, well, I'm going to sue them, because we kind of live in a society where everybody likes to just sue people for nothing, So we have to be diligent in what we offer and also in the expectation. So as a queen, they're your partner for your business for that year. So you've got to make that partnership work. So it's not about me reigning over my queens. It's about us working together to reach an end goal of promoting the pageant, helping it to grow, and be ready for a next group of queens to be crowned the following year.
Yeah. It really is a team effort. It is the title holders, the director, whoever that director's team is. It really is a team effort throughout the year of their reign. But I wanted to touch on something you said. Some pageant contracts have a non-compete.
Yes.
And that means if you win that title, then you don't compete for another system for any reason. When I was directing, I would allow young ladies to compete in other systems. I guess my line in the sand was they were not allowed to compete for a system that would require them to give up my title or relinquish their reign with me. And I didn't want them competing for a system that would take time away from me, because they'd already signed a contract. They knew what I expected. I'm big on community service. I'm one of those, let's leave the world in a better place than when we found it. And I do think, that crown allows a queen a stage to talk about the things that are most important to her. But it is most definitely a two-way street. I've kind of been blessed.
Yes.
I've never had to take a title. I've been blessed. Doesn't mean that there haven't been difficult situations every once in a while. But I think, they have a right to know what we're providing for them and the expense it comes with. Most prize packages are either donated, the items in it are donated, or, as you and I know, they come out of our pocket, or we find sponsors. So I think
and talking about contracts with sponsors, we also have a contract program that we do with our sponsors, because I don't want somebody to say, and I actually had this happen to me one time. I had a lady that came to me and she wanted to set up this $100,000 prize package that I was to award that year. And she told me she had these connections with different companies. She wanted to give laptops to this age group. She wanted to give a Macy's shopping spree to this age group. She wanted to do a car for this one age group. And so we worked out this scale, I guess, of who was getting what, and it depended on how many people was in the pageant, because you can only give some, if the money's not there, you can't give it, right? But she was actually going to get these donated for me and have them done. And she says, I will back them up. If they don't pay it, I will back them up. So I created a contract because it made me nervous. And I actually approached another director in my pageant system to discuss it with her. And so she was like, oh, yeah, I would definitely have her sign a contract, yada, yada. Well, come to find out, the director went and told a contestant I was giving away a car, and it was her age division. It was an adult. And then come find out, when I didn't give away the car because the lady would never sign her contract to sponsor these products, I never actually publicly announced them. I just shared them with the director, but she inadvertently shared them with somebody else. So when it comes down to it, she was like, oh my, I'm going to sue you. I should have a car. And I'm like, I didn't even promote that we were having a car. So you got to be careful who you share your information with, but you do need a contract for those sponsors. That taught me right there that, and if she wouldn't sign it, I wasn't going to promote it. And I'm so glad I didn't promote it, because that would have really ruined my business, thinking I'm supposed to give away all this stuff and I didn't get it done. So we do also need contracts with those sponsors to make sure they do it. You can do different levels of sponsorship, like a bronze, silver, gold. The more they do, the more they get. So they understand what their return is as well, how much advertising they're going to get in place of this and things like that too. So I think it's very important to have contracts with sponsors as well.
And then I think you need to make sure that you honor it, whether it's mentions on Facebook, ads in your program book, inviting them to your pageant, free seating there, or to take your title holders once you've crowned and make appearances at that establishment. I think that's part of building your system so it continues to grow year after year.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's excuse me, going to depend on your sponsor, because if it were just a state pageant, that would be easier to do. But when I have international winners from all over the world, it's kind of hard to bring them in. So at least a thank you note would be great, right?
Yes.
So there are little things to the big things that we can do to help them out, because I know that is a big deal, because so many businesses get hit up for sponsorships. And you said this earlier when we started about there are pageants who advertise these massive, huge sponsorship packages. And in some ways, the mom in me wants to go, now, will my daughter get ABC, and will she get this, or will she get that, And if that sponsor didn't actually give that stuff to the director, then the director, in which all pageants I have seen have this on their site, that they're not responsible for prizes that are forfeited by their sponsor. And we have to do that to protect ourselves. Because if they don't give it to us, just like this lady didn't give me those prizes, I could not have awarded those, because I didn't have $100,000 at that point. We were just starting. I think we were only 2 years old when that happened. So then suddenly the lady disappeared off the face of the earth, and we actually went hunting for her because I was so upset. I wanted to go talk to her and say, why did you do this? But we never did find her. We haven't found her to this day. So
oh, wow.
Off the face of the earth. But those things will happen, especially with a new director. And there are so many pageants that are popping up. I mean, every day I see something. There's a new pageant, new pageant, new pageant. There are so many people that have not done their homework and understand. First of all, you got to have a business mind to do this, and you've got to also have a strong backbone, because you're going to be criticized, you're going to be ridiculed, you're going to have people that love you and people that hate you, people that's going to turn on you. And that happens with any business, not just with pageantry. So I don't want people to get the idea that it could be bad to be a director, because it could be very rewarding. But I have learned to be a very tough person. Sometimes that plays over into being a pastor's wife. And I'm just like, fuck it up.
Baby.
Because I know you can't do that.
Baby.
Well.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just got to make sure that if we are a director and you're getting sponsors and you're getting vendors or whatever you're doing, get it all in writing. I know that there was one hotel that I was working with. I had this lady kept saying, oh, don't worry about that. We can do that. Oh, don't worry about that. We can do that. Well, guess what? When I started my pageant, she got fired. So all I had was her word and nothing was in writing. So luckily it wasn't anything I couldn't handle, but it could have been something I couldn't handle as well. So we got to make sure that everything you do, you get in writing so that you have something to back that up, whether it's an email or it's a letter or it's a text.
Right. And I think that goes along with you're on the advisory board for the International Association of Pageantry.
Yes, very honored.
I am there too. Thank you. I love pageantry, and I know you do. And I do believe, we survive better when it's pageantry supporting pageantry, because we all are in this together. But I do think there needs to be a code of ethics, and there needs to be a standard. You and I both have seen it go real right, and we've seen it go real wrong. And I think the deal is just to do what is decent and honorable and right. But this was started to kind of say, here are the guidelines. Self-regulating though it may be, everyone is welcome to join. But I think that's something our industry had lacked for quite some time.
Yes, I would agree. And I know that it's just beginning and we have a long way to go with this. And no pageant is perfect. I don't care. I mean, we're seeing that with some of the issues with some of the bigger pageant system that has kind of been having, a rocky road over the last couple of years. So no pageant is going to be perfect. My pageant is not perfect. And no pageant you ever directed was perfect either. Everything, because we're all learning. And as you said, without the self-regulation, we have no one to go to and say, I have a question, So if you can find a good mentor director to mentor you, I suggest it's the first place that you go. I also suggest that if you can start at a lower level, being a director for something, kind of get your feet wet, that helps. Because if you go out and build this pageant, boom, you're going to have 200 people. All of a sudden you get there and you're like, oh, my venue is half the size I need. I don't have this. I don't have that. My directors or my judges showed up late. I actually had it happen last year where I had a judge who just did not show up. And so I had somebody there that I had fill in. Those things happen. But if you're running an ethical and high moral organization, people are going to be, it's okay. I know Pat would not put somebody in there that would not judge us fairly. So, and I heard that so many times, and they were just, I was spanked for that, Have I done everything right? No. Have I learned from that? Yes. And we will all continue to grow and learn because we're all just human beings. God didn't make anybody perfect. There was one Jesus Christ, and he's the only one that'll ever be, you know. But as we move forward, I believe that as an organization, if you can become a member of like the IAOP, it will help you to build I guess, a relationship with other people in the world. It's also going to help you have that seal of approval that we've said, yes, we agree with how you're running your business. And we don't want to be the judgmental, pageant police. We're not trying to do that. In my opinion, I don't feel like.
Yeah.
I just think we're trying to say, here are some standards that we need to go by. Because if we don't have those standards, then that's where we see the things that fall apart within pageantry, where directors take contestants' money, then you never see them again. Or they create fake scholarships, or they create fake. I know one pageant that created fake college degrees for the contestants.
Oh my gosh.
And all they had to do was like write an essay, and boom, they got a PhD and such and such. So we know that stuff doesn't happen in real life. We don't want to demean somebody else's PhD because they worked 3 years for it. It cost them $100,000 to get there.
Exactly.
So yes, this is a great organization. I would encourage directors, whether you're a preliminary director, a state, national, or an international director, to be a part of, because it helps people to look and say, oh, it's like the other day. I'll give you this example. I'm a member of the Better Business Bureau. And since I took on the IAOP, I was going to cancel my membership. So I actually called Better Business Bureau and I said, look, I'm looking at not continuing this. I said, you have kept raising the fees for the membership, and I just don't think it's beneficial to me because it has nothing really to do with pageantry. She said, well, let me give you some statistics. She said, you average about 100 people per month clicking to see what your rating is for Better Business Bureau, because we have a link from that from our website to it. And I was really surprised. I was like, wow, maybe it is worth keeping it. So I ended up keeping it anyway. And how good would that be when somebody looks and says, oh, they're a member of the IAOP. This must be a great organization. I could put my daughter in, or I could compete in, and feel good about what I'm doing. And I'm going to get good value, and I'm going to be treated well and respected. And it's a respectful organization. So I would recommend any director who can to be a part of this organization and give yourself some leverage to work with as you're building your brand.
Well, and I think you're a lot like me and how I was when I directed, and really what I believe now. It really has to be about the young lady. If we can remember that pageantry is about the young lady and her journey, then we'll do everything in our power to try and help make sure it's a pleasant experience, that everything is done correctly. And that really is what the IAOP was created for. And it really is just, I guess, a base standard. Most industries had a regulatory body, and we didn't. And it is an industry that, we both love. So I do think in years to come, hopefully this organization will grow and it will become an organization everyone looks to set the standard.
Yes.
So I thank you for your time today. I thank you for your input and your insight. Yes, ma'am. It has been a great conversation, and I thank you for agreeing to join us.
All right. You guys have a blessed day. Stay safe and keep praying for everybody. Keep praying for my queen and my queen's husbands and everybody. And we're doing the same for you. And I just know going forward, one thing I would say, I've had different people say, well, what are you going to do about pageants? Should we just cancel the pageant because of the virus or whatever? Everybody is guessing at what we're supposed to do moving forward. So just know that everybody, whether it's a pageant or it's a corporation or it's a bowling alley or it's a grocery store, everybody's trying to keep in mind to keep everybody safe. So just support your directors, support your businesses, and be there for them like they're trying to be there for you.
Yes, and I agree to those in Facebook land. Be safe, take care of yourself. We're all in this together.
Yes.
And God willing, we'll all come out the other side and be fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Okay. You too. Bye-bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.